Okay. I'm Dr. Edward Garman, and I'm talking to you about silicosis and the inhalation of silica particles into the lung. It's primarily a pulmonary disease related to dust exposure, and the dust can be from almost anything. It usually is related to people who've worked in mines or people who work in different occupations where there's crushing of rock and making of a dust. That becomes a fine thing, and then it's inhaled into your lungs. And once it gets into your lungs, it goes to the periphery of your lungs, your alveoli, and causes a fibrosis. And the end result is pulmonary fibrosis, which is bad COPD, and most people die of pulmonary complications. There's also an acute form of silicosis, which happens rarely, but a few people are exposed to silica and they get an acute reaction to it, and they become short of breath, and usually they do not survive very long, probably just a couple of years afterwards, and then they can be at a very young age and not have a huge exposure unless they, what I mean by a huge exposure, not over a long period of time, they could have a large exposure at one interval. There's also comparison that to the coal miner's disease or lung disease. Silica is a dust particle. The thing from coal miner's disease, which is inhaled, is a fiber, and that fiber causes fibrosis. So when you look at the lungs become hyperinflated, and you get, with silicosis, you get lymph node calcification. They call it eggshell calcification, and you get usually involvement of the middle and upper lobes with retraction. Many people who have silicosis also get tuberculosis, and that can lead to the demise from tuberculosis also as a complication on this silicosis. There are really no good ways to treat silicosis. The only good thing to do with silicosis is prevention. And prevention is by anything to decrease the exposure to it, to wearing a mask or facial protection things. Typically, I forgot to say that a person who has worked in the field where you have dust exposure or silica, they present with coughing, and then they present with shortness of breath, and it's just a slowly progressive disease. And different things are used to help these people, like inhalers and so forth, but nothing really can cure the disease or change the outcome.